I'm just wondering what you make about what has been Republican strategy so far when it comes to the Epstein files. President Trump did campaign on releasing them, but at this point, that doesn't seem to be the White House's position now. How should have Republicans been playing this?
Well, it's been an absolute disaster for Republicans. I mean, to shut down the House of Representatives for all these weeks, the longest government shutdown, but the House being out of session all this time, has been a disaster for Republicans. So when they open up, they will have bipartisan support. You know, Congressman Massey, a Republican, along with Ro Khanna, has led that discharge petition. So they now have the votes. And I do imagine there will be quite a few Republicans who will join on that. I know Congressman Don Bacon, a Republican, and others have already said that they will vote for that. And given that Republicans, including when I was in Congress, I worked on human trafficking legislation and passed bills, and there were a lot of Republicans who did. Many Republicans who supported legislation like that will look very hypocritical if they don't support this measure now to release the Epstein files, when so many of them already did support that. And given that the Epstein estate has these files, and certainly it seems that they are willing to put more and more of those files out. So it will be foolish if the congressman, after you saw what happened in Virginia and New Jersey and in all of these special elections, if after Republicans have been out there on the record all the way up to Donald Trump and J.D. Vance themselves have said, hey, why don't we release these files? What are they hiding? And we've already seen a lot of the information in those files. They need to get quickly down there to the floor and say they are for releasing these files.
Well, we understand we could see, Congresswoman, 40 to 50 Republicans vote in the House. But this is, at the moment, at least, going nowhere in the Senate. Even if this does pass the House, what does John Thune do?
Well, if you're one of a third of those Republicans who are going to be up for election, again, many of those who have harped on this issue for years, you do not want to have ads run against you being a pedophile protector. That is not going to be a story to have Jeffrey Epstein, pictures in those ads against you. And you do not want to have these victims who are very strong advocates for themselves showing up in ads saying, here's what he said before the election that they should be released. Now here's what they're saying after. And this is something that the MAGA base themselves are not sympathetic on keeping these files under wraps. You know, you're seeing MAGA flags in neighborhoods coming down because they want these files released. You have White House battles between and among people like Pam Bondi and Dan Bongino and the FBI director, Kash Patel, who himself was on the air saying, why don't they put these files out there? So there's really no recourse to not letting these files, become public.
So this is a debate that has come up now that the government is reopened. Something up that is coming up because the government's reopened is the policy fight ahead when it comes to health care. And both sides of the aisle have said that they are willing to negotiate and that something needs to be done when it comes to health care. From your time on the Hill, do you think it's viable that we could see a deal by January 30th, which is that next looming deadline, that we could get a potentially another government shutdown?
I certainly hope not. I mean, people have suffered. I mean, during this shutdown, that's why you should move on from things like the Epstein files, because they need to be focusing on good policy. And you've had a bipartisan coalition come together to say they do want to find a solution, because you have people right now, people who are cancer victims, people with Alzheimer's, people, who are farmers who are on these exchanges, people who are pregnant saying, hey, I'm 6 or 7 months pregnant. I'm not due until next year, but my premiums are going from $500 a month to $2,000 or $3,000 a month. Congressman Bacon, again, a Republican, Congressman Jeff Van Drew, a Republican, has said, we are crazy if we don't come up with a solution for this. These frontline Republicans who are now, they've looked at the results in Virginia and New Jersey, and they realize if they don't pass some kind of solution, as Jeff Van Drew said, it's the moral right thing to do, but it's the politically right thing to do. If we don't pass a solution, we are going to get politically slaughtered next year. And they are right.